Hi, welcome to the Liam Scheff Show on UCY TV and Truth Frequency Radio. I am Liam Scheff, your host. You can buy my book of digital stories online. It is a reverse textbook to all the lies you and I were taught in school. My book, which I am working on now, my upcoming book is called This Is All Temporary, about water, food, and energy shortages, and our likely responses and our best responses to them. There will be pictures of trees as well. We'll talk about that. Pictures, drawings of trees. Why, Liam? Why? Why not? Shut up. It's my book. Fuck you, I'll do what I want. You know, that's the wrong attitude. Let's start over. Hi, good to meet you. My name's Liam Scheff. This is the Liam Scheff Show on UCY TV and Truth Frequency Radio. I'm here in South Florida. Should be heading to a permaculture farm on the weekend. If you're listening to this, I've headed to the permaculture farm, and I can tell you that it was grand. It was great. We're going to be looking at growing at the different layers. You have the ground layer and the shrub layer, the low tree and the high tree. Wherever you live, there are low plants that grow in the dirt, in raised beds. You have shrubs that generally grow fruits or berries, and sometimes things like capers. Or olives grow on trees, but things like capers and sometimes little things you can pickle or salt, sometimes edible leaves. And then you have low trees. There are a variety of trees that don't grow very high. Then you have taller trees that grow food. Trees are going to be very, very important, at least to me, and I'm going to try to tell you why they should be important to you. Again, my name is Liam Scheff, and you can find my work at my website, liamscheff.com, on the Facebook page where I post what's happening in the immediate moment. Sometimes on Twitter when I remember it, I just have no love or respect for something that limits you to whatever it is, haiku syllables. I think it's the end of the world. I don't know what Pinterest and these other things are. I'm sorry. There are only so many hours. I suppose I need a social media manager to make it all work, but then I'd have to have a consistent message. So here's my consistent message. The world is going to be changing radically from a high energy usage to a moderate energy usage. The possibility of a series of crashes, I think, is extremely high. I think the probability of a number of crashes is extremely high. I don't think those crashes occur everywhere at once. As we're seeing, California is facing a crisis. That crisis will affect California first and then the rest of the country. We'll talk about that. Bookmark California water, food crisis. But the crisis that you'll have in Detroit, which we're already having, or in Chicago, or God help it, the lovely town of Madison, Wisconsin, or any northern, Minneapolis, any of these northern towns, Pittsburgh, Ottawa, Montreal, any of the crises that you'll have in these towns and cities, New York, are different than the crises that you'll have in Miami or Austin, Dallas, Houston, San Diego, Phoenix. But they'll be related. They'll be related to energy and the ability to heat or cool a home. I see those crises happening pretty clearly. We're entirely energy dependent. Now let me lay the groundwork for you. If I unplugged the Western world from oil for 24 hours in the middle of winter, millions of people would die. One more time. If I managed to unplug the Western world, let me add coal to that, and then you'll really understand what I'm saying. If I managed to unplug the Western world, all of these northeastern cities, from coal and oil, fossil fuels, in the middle of winter, millions of people would die. They would freeze to death overnight. If I left coal in the mix, leaving their electricity on so that most of them had heat, but many of them didn't, because the Northeast is often heated by home heating oil, which is a crude diesel oil. Millions of people hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people might die, or they would run to shelters. But, sometimes you go to bed cold and you die, you freeze overnight. That's a fact. It's a fact because, well, you're saying it's a fact. Well, they would get up and be cold and run. I'm saying, let's say you're in the middle of a blizzard. Let's say that you have had 65 inches of snow in the last 2 weeks, and you've just been in the middle of a blizzard. The electricity goes out and it stays out for 24 hours. The roads, there's no gas. It's my scenario. I'm saying, cut off oil, empty the gas tanks. Millions of people freeze to death. If you take out coal and you don't allow the people who are heating their homes electrically, and again, Northeast, a lot of people heat their homes with oil. So millions of people die. That's how closely we're connected. That's how life and death it is, and how quick it could and will happen in places when there's a shortage, an embargo, a blockage, a terrorist action, or not a non-terrorist action, a market action, or simply a shortfall. A pipeline breaking, carrying something, a train getting derailed in a huge spill and a fire at a crucial moment when there are fewer backup supplies. Well, you're saying, well, why doesn't that happen now? Why doesn't it happen now? Because we don't cut the interrupt. We have oil laying around. We have it stockpiled, and that's why the price is so artificially low right now. But when you listen to this in a year, if you listen to this in a year, the price will not be what it is right now. The price will be much higher. Because the oil market was glutted by oil from fracking, which was fracked nonstop, which was drilled nonstop over a period of years at a total loss, based on loans, artificially cheap loans. So it's essentially a government program. The loans are artificially cheap. The loan rate is artificially cheap. These companies go in and drill, and they're in such a rush to prove that fracking is a success and to make the production rate of U.S. oil go up for the first time in 10 years or whatever it is since we started declining in 2005. We were declining before that, weren't we? We've been in decline since 73, somewhere around there. And then I guess, we've been in decline since 73. We're a net importer. We're still a net importer of oil. So net means we import more than we make. But they wanted to put so much into the market to prove that they were going to be the great success, to prove to their investors that this Ponzi scheme, that this lie that they'd sold them, that fracking was going to be a new Saudi Arabia of, several million barrels of oil per day being produced, was true, that they ended up creating a glut, which drove prices down because the market only thinks in 15-second, sometimes 15-minute increments. In this case, it's just seconds. They're only thinking about seconds to minutes. Oh, well, we have too much, let's lower the price. That's the market. Well, but it cost us $100. We need $97 a barrel to recoup the cost, just to break even. Well, we're going to sell it for $30. Because the Saudis can still sell their oil for, $35, $38, even though they're in a decline. They're not out. They're in a decline. They're in a permanent decline, but they're in a decline of light oil, the stuff that comes out easily, that's been coming out for decades. Fracked oil is heavy, greasy, disgusting, stuff that needs to be, twice refined and put through extra cleaning processes that are expensive in terms of more fossil fuel used. So the price has been artificially lowered, which has driven the fracking business out of business in this country in the last 2 months. If you want a shock, you can look online and see, fracking loses 75,000 jobs, 100,000 jobs. People are buying fracking equipment, mass drilling equipment for, quarter of the cost that it costs to buy. 100,000 for 400,000. Well, it's not like they won't do any more fracking here. They're still fracking, but they've cut back on their operations because they're operating at a loss. They glutted the market, and they can't afford to continue to do it. They told their investors it was going to be a great investment scheme. It turned out not to be. It's more than a wash. It's a loss, which means that only the government can afford to drill for oil that way. Hold that thought. That's very important. In the future, only the government will be able to frack for oil because it's a loser unless you're willing to charge the $100 and something per barrel that it takes to recoup the cost of that fracking. The cost of drilling so many more wells than you have to for conventional drilling, the cost of polluting all of that water and paying people off when you destroy their water and land, the cost of the triple length process you have to extract oil from tight, highly compacted rock that you have to explode, to underground to get to produce anything. I mean, this is the work. There's a reason that we didn't, say, hey, hey, we can drill a hole over here and we produce a lot of cheap oil. Look, it pops out of the top and bursts. It's a gusher. Look at that. No. Don't worry about that. I know that oil is just filling 100,000 barrels over there, but listen, there's some rock under my feet. It's about 30 feet down. And if we could just invent a way to drill down and then to the side, it would be very expensive, and then explode, hear me out, explode crack some of the ground, and then re-flood that with a couple billion gallons of water. Okay, where are you going? Why are you walking away? All right, never mind. It was a bad idea. Right, it was always a bad idea. Fracking was always a bad idea, and there's a reason why nobody really gave a damn about it before peak oil. We're in peak oil. There's no reason to frack unless you've reached the top and maybe you're on the downside of the good stuff. When do you eat your green beans? Well, if you're like me, I suppose if they're not overcooked, they're good. But if they're that terrible overcooked green bean and they're sitting on your plate and you've got good mashed potatoes and you've got whatever else, and then you've got the green beans, you're either like me and you say, we can't leave until you eat green beans. So you eat them first, get them out of the way. But most people eat the green beans last, because it's unpleasurable. It's the worst part of your meal. Overcooked green beans, industrial green beans. It's these gray things. They're not even green. You don't know what they are. They're watery. They're just sort of like pustules. They're cool. They don't have any real flavor except sort of gasp of something that they let go of in the field. You're not sure what they are, and you have to eat them or you can't leave the table. And you don't know why. They were cooked and cut in a factory and then frozen and then sent to the refrigerated section of the grocery store, the freezer, and your mother threw them in boiling water for 10 minutes for some reason. And then you have to eat them. When do you eat? You eat them last because they're the worst part of the meal. Fracking is the worst part of the oil meal. Well, it's not even the worst part. I mean, the worst part is the tartar sauce. Oh my God. Who decided to chop up some sort of weird old pickle and throw it in mayonnaise and call it something? This is just ungodly. That's tar sands. Tar sands is tartar sauce. You don't want to touch that stuff. It stinks. It's sulfuric. It destroys the environment. We're going to do it all. We're going to do it wherever we can because we've peaked. People don't want to address peak oil anymore. They think that it's sort of bad manners. But we've peaked. We've used the cheaply available good stuff, and we're on to the disgusting parts of the meal, but we're still hungry. You're listening to the Liam Scheff Show on Truth Frequency Radio and UCY TV. We're talking about the future price of food and water. California, you can tell that we built this country based on the notion that we had an infinite energy source called oil with which we could build roads and build little metal machines to put on the roads and push down the roads from an internal explosion engine. I mean, there are only two machines in the world. There's the machine that we explode something inside and drive a metal piston, and there's the machine that we spin a wheel and create electricity. And we really spin the wheel by burning something. So maybe there's only one machine in the world, and it's fire. We've really not moved beyond that. We just use it in a couple different ways. We're still using the gift of Prometheus everywhere we go. All right, so we've got two kinds of machines, and then we've got California and the Great Western Expanse. We destroy the ancient European city from which everything's accessible from the town center, or in which everything's accessible from the town center, in which the fields are staggered all around the town. Let's get back to the first proposition. If I were able to cut off oil supply for a week in any season, almost everybody would be starving to death by the end of the week. In every city, many people would be dead. I'm saying if I could cut off oil, and I mean gasoline, for a week, 7 days, in America, Well, you'd go through the groceries you had at home in the first 2 days. Then you'd go to the grocery store and realize that everybody else was there too. The rioting would be happening, but the police would be on bicycles. So nobody would really pay attention. There would be shootings, but people would overwhelm the police because they were not in their cars. Nobody's got oil. A few dopes would be driving around their electric cars. They'd immediately be killed. Their cars would be stolen, ripped to pieces. People would stay inside and be afraid and go hungry. People would come out looking for water. Well, water would be coming through the pumps, wouldn't it? Well, no, I took away oil. These diesel pumps that make electrical systems work in many places. Oh, say they're electric. Say that they run from electric, which is burning coal, spinning the electric wheels. So maybe some places have pumping water and some places don't. You tell me. You tell me where the water, from where the water is being pumped and what machines are pumping it. Are they electrical or are they diesel? If they're diesel, you don't have any fresh water or whatever, city water coming in through your tap. A week of this. This is how tenuously we are positioned on the longest branch of the tallest tree that is Western civilization. So don't kid yourself. We're entirely dependent on this thing called oil. It's no joke. Now you say this is an unlikely scenario, that I'd just be able to expecto patronum, expelliarmus, and magically stupefy, take away all the oil, abracadabra. In the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. All the oil is gone. Simsalabim. All the oil is suddenly gone. No. Okay, nobody can do that. So we're still going to have oil coming in. And even when we had the embargoes, we had trickles of gas coming in. Sure, there were gas lines. Sure, there was rationing. Sure, you could buy 2 gallons or 3 gallons or 1 gallon or 5 gallons, but no more. So the trucks will get there. We may not be able to drive. So suddenly we're going to be doing something. We're going to be carpooling. We're going to be car sharing. And helpful car share programs are going to go all around. And we'll do that on the internet. Oh, wait a second. The internet runs on electricity. How much energy is used to run the internet? How much energy is used to run the servers that run the energy? Is it 10% of U.S. electricity? It might be. Well, that might get cut. We might be rationing internet. Oh, you know what we might use? Bulletin boards. That's right. You might be able to walk to a local kiosk and see a bulletin board that says, I need to go here. Anybody going here? And you end up in a network of people, motley as they are, driving around in somebody's the largest car with the best gas mileage that you can find to hold the most people, probably a station wagon, not an SUV of any sort, and you go to trips to the grocery store, and the grocery store has things that are brought in by trucks. The food is increasingly less processed because, no, we're talking about life in an oil slowdown. And let's say that you get through that week and oil is returned, but it's returned at 20% of what we have. And here's the scenario. We got 20%, 30, let's give us 50%. Let's give us 50% of the oil that we have. Or let's say we could have all the oil we wanted if we would only pay $8 a gallon for it. It's the same scenario. People don't realize it, but there's only so much they're able to pay. So there it is. We are entirely dependent. If oil goes up in price precariously, it will be less attractive to the oil companies to drill it. Therefore, we will have less oil. One more time, if the price of oil goes up precariously because the places that oil companies are getting the oil, aka fracking, cost it much more, aka drilling off the coast of Africa. That's where they're looking, off the coast of Africa, off the coast of Brazil, in what they call ultra-deep water, miles of ocean, miles of salt dome under the ocean, miles and miles, 4 or 5 miles of material before you actually get to what you hope is oil. You don't know that it's oil. You've got to dig 15 exploratory wells in this environment. How do you cap these things? Who dives down to the bottom? What kind of seasonal help workers do you train to become ultra-deep negotiators of ocean trenches, the bottom of the ocean, 3 miles down, 2 miles down? This is not likely, but this is where oil companies are now looking. When that becomes, and it is becoming, the source of our next big oil find, the price of oil has to match the cost of getting it. And you're talking $150 a gallon, $200 a gallon for that kind of oil. just to recoup the cost of doing it, unless the government takes it over. At which point, this is an extremely rationed product. It's hard to get. It's essentially all done by the military. And then we live in a truly militarized state. I think we already do, but we live in a truly militarized state. We're grateful to them for getting our oil. They bring it up. They risk their lives. They make the spills. It's all covered up. We never really know what's happening. The oil's lapping on the beach because there are always spills. We can't go to the beach, but we still have some public transportation. It's not a great scenario. So, when people talk about collapse, you always get the idea that they're describing, there will be no oil one day. No, there'll be oil. There'll be little bits of it. There'll be, people will try to be turning vegetable oil or coal into some sort of gasoline product, but it'll be very expensive. Our habits will change to accommodate the increasing price. We will get into this car sharing thing. Car sharing will become the way that cities survive. The suburbs will demand that public transportation serve them better. Bus lines will, by needs, expand, but people will have to hand over their car keys. You'll essentially have to say, okay, I just won't drive anymore because the bus fare will be $4 or $5. $10 round trip to get you, back and forth maybe to the grocery store or the city. It'll be part of your job, and you'll be sharing it with a lot of other people, and it will take you an hour and a half to get there. What used to take you 30 minutes in your car will take you an hour and a half, but that's the way you'll do it. So you'll not want to work at that job anymore. You want to work where you live, but you live in the suburbs, and you really have no town center, and there's really nothing to do out there, and your water comes in, and maybe you even have well water. Maybe you're lucky you have well water, maybe you can hunt, but, the city, you moved out of the city so you could come in on, to work, but you don't really live there anymore, but now you're tempted to move back, but life in the city is tough because there's a lot of rationing and there's no well water, and the water's, you're not quite sure what's wrong with the water there, and the sky seems to be sprayed all the time. And there's always military guard to enforce curfews because you can't, there are parts of town that can stay open all night where people get drunk and spend money, but, generally in the civilian areas, you better be walking with your ID past 10 or 11 because you will get asked who you are and where, if you live there, because robbery is going to be something that people are going to have to look out for. Because banditry will increase. Because people will be hungry. And they'll be looking to see if you have a little bit of money. We're talking about a low oil environment. I'm talking about the Middle Ages. The future looks a lot more like a Dickensian novel than the Jetsons. There's no way around it. I'm not saying there aren't better solutions. Now people will come along and offer technological fixes, ways to increase the way that we, improve the way that we use heat. So a machine, what do you call it? A generating factory. I can't remember the name right now. A generating plant, and we call them plants. Isn't that funny? A generating plant for electricity will now also double as a heat plant, and that heat will be siphoned off to reheat that building and also be used to reheat some of the energy. So it'll be, instead of a 40%, it'll be more of a 60 or a 70%, and that's good. But so what? It's. You've improved 30% off of 40. It's great. You've almost doubled. But so what? You're still burning coal. You're still burning oil. Okay, maybe you're burning trash. Maybe we've just given up and we've started to burn the trash. All right, good. So we're burning the trash. But so what? In order to make a lot of trash, you have to have a lot of energy, a lot of oil to make a lot of stuff. And we're running lower on that, so we're making less stuff. And we're reusing everything. We're keeping a lot of glass around to carry things in. We're walking and biking to work. Bicycles are now a very important part of society. Fixing bicycles, trading bicycles, upgrading parts of bicycles. It's a very big deal. Everybody wants to mod their bike and make it fashionable and pretty. Everybody's into bicycles now. Some people have mopeds. But a lot of people have bicycles. All the yuppies have bicycles. Bicycles are cool. People are getting bicycle tattoos. I love my bike. I heart bike. I heart bike is a big thing. The internet's on for a couple hours a night. Everybody can afford about 2 hours a day of internet for emailing. But you can't spin the servers all night long anymore. You just pay. You pay for it. And it's slow. It's much slower than it used to be. Because it's not a priority. And a lot of people go back to letter writing, which is hard because, well, you've got to use gas to do that. So the telephone comes back into vogue. Thank God not everybody tore up all the telephone lines. The future looks a little more like the past, doesn't it? I mean, think about how much energy we use and how much energy we waste. You're listening to the Liam Scheff Show. When we come back from the break, we're going to talk about some food solutions, food problems and solutions. Please support independent research. Buy my book, Official Stories. It's at Amazon.com for a song. I think $5 or $6 on Kindle right now, and $13 on for paperback. It's a wonderful, enjoyable book that will make you think and laugh and wonder how we ever got lied to so often by so few. You can also buy my novel, The Truth About Love, which is an exploration of a character called Will Miller, who's modeled not so distantly on yours truly, as he realizes, he comes to grip with the fact that he's not entirely monogamous, and really nobody he knows is, and that seems to be perfectly okay. It's a sweet-natured love story of sorts, with many loves and many deep emotional conversations among and between the characters, and many very funny situations that the character, the sometimes naive and sometimes occasionally wise Will seems to get into. We will see you after this break. Hi, UCY listeners. Now a little bit of poetry from Henry V by, I think, Edward de Vere and Company, but you can read Official Stories to find out why I say that. No, it was not William Shakespeare of Stratford. It was another writer. Please read Chapter 7 of Official Stories to hear that argument and 9 others about the world that we think that we live in. From Henry V, the prologue. I'm just going to read you some of it. Don't get scared. This is just so beautiful. Oh, for a muse of fire that would ascend the brightest heaven of invention, a kingdom for a stage, princes to act, and monarchs to behold the swelling scene. Oh, for a muse of fire, the brightest heaven, a kingdom for a stage. In other words, a stage for a kingdom. Princes to act, no, actors for princes. And monarchs to behold the swelling scene. No, just you rabble out there watching. Then should the warlike Harry, like himself, assume the port of Mars, Mars, god of war, and at his heels, leashed in like hounds, should famine, starve, sword and fire fight, crouch for employment, but pardon and gentles all the flat and unraised spirits that have dared on this, the flat and unraised spirits, the dreary, bored, almost depressed people that have dared on this unworthy scaffold, this stage that we're on, to bring forth so great an object. In other words, use your imagination. We're going to tell you about Henry V, Harry. We're going to call him Harry, like we really know him, like we're in the trenches with him. It's very beautiful stuff. Can this cockpit hold the vast fields of France? Or may we cram within this wooden, the very casks that did affright the air at Agincourt, the great battle, if battles are great. Oh, pardon, since a crooked figure, his crooked figure, may attest in little place 1,000,000. In other words, you're going to have one poor guy standing here being 1,000,000 people. You got to imagine that. Isn't this the beauty? This is the special effects of the imagination. And let us ciphers to this great accomplishment on your imaginary forces work. Suppose within the girdle of these walls are now confined 2 mighty monarchies, whose high upreared and abutting fronts the perilous narrow ocean parts asunder. Piece out our imperfections with your thoughts. Put aside our imperfections with your thoughts, into 1,000 parts divide one man, and make imaginary puissance or power. Anyway, we will be right back. A little of Henry V for you on The Liam Scheff Show. We are back on the Liam Scheff Show on UCY TV and Truth Frequency Radio. Please turn down your radio, sir, when you call in. Hey, man. Really cool show, man. Please turn your radio down, sir, when you call in. We're talking about energy depletion. We're talking about water, oil, coal, food, and sharing cars in the future. The future is going to be, by needs, lower energy. We are, unless somebody comes up and pulls a rabbit out of a hat and figures out some cold fusion method, we're going to be running on lower energy, as we did in the 1960s, 50s, 40s, 30s, 20s, teens, 1800s, etc. So it won't really be new to our species to use much less energy. It'll just be new to you and me, although if you're old enough, you might remember having less energy. If we cut oil for a week in this country, millions would starve, millions would panic, and millions would die. I outlined my idea about that in the first half. You can go back and listen to it in the archive and see if you agree. Let's talk about food. Food comes from where? Food comes from the grocery store. It fills the grocery store shelves at night naturally, organically. Little elves push it up. No, it's just excreted through the floor of restaurants. In fact, if you close the door of a Whole Foods at any point, food just regenerates on the shelves, like some sort of magical food pouch. No, food is brought by many busy hands, moving busy packages down busy assembly lines that come from busy machines, working in busy factories, taking material from very busy fields, being worked over by very active combines, seeders, pickers, fertilized sprayers, chemical sprayers, etc. We live in a mechanized world. I mean, there's plenty of human interference and involvement, but it's a very mechanized world. People might drive these combines, but, it's nothing without the machine itself. In a lower energy world, priority will have to be taken by local government to make sure that energy goes not to internet servers or stock car racing, but to driving the combines in the field so there's food. Believe it or not, I think when it comes to that level, some sense of survival instinct will direct the use of resources. But it has to get that bad. People will complain and say it's un-American, say the government's hiding all the oil, and if we just blew up the country, we'd find plenty of oil under the rubble. Well, maybe so. Food right now, a third of the vegetables, the produce in the country comes from a place called Californistan. And Californistan is connected to the U.S. by a land bridge called Arizona and Nevada and some other places, Oregon. And these land bridges resent, having to sidle up to Californistan, and because Californistan steals all their water, steals all the water from the Colorado River and from places in Oregon and other locales. So people aren't going to be terribly sad, or they think they won't be sad if Californistan goes down the drain. But the truth is that they'll be very upset because, again, a third of the produce that we eat comes there. And if 33% or so, or thereabouts, of the produce that the country eats goes away, then 60-something%, and a lot of it's not just the same items. You lose a lot of strawberries, you lose avocados, you lose almonds, pistachios, you lose a lot of tomatoes, you lose a lot of salad greens and green vegetables, you lose the most popular vegetables, you lose a lot of carrots, you lose most of the vegetables that we eat regularly that are cheap because they're artificially grown in a desert that's watered with ancient groundwater, ancient aquifer water, and that's what we've been doing for 40 years. Since, after John Steinbeck wrote East of Eden, somebody thought, well, wouldn't it be great just to grow everything here, spray these dry, hot desert, semi-arid valley floors with water that we steal from somewhere. Where do we steal it from? Well, let's steal it from underground. Okay. That'll never run out. The earth's hollow, after all, filled with water and jelly babies and jujubes. Well, it wasn't, and the water does run low, and it is running out. When we're out of those vegetables, the vegetables that come from other places will have to suddenly be used, which will increase, that'll be good for local farms. And they'll have a lot of work on their hands. They'll suddenly be growing much more they'll be able to increase their yields, and not waste them, not burn them. So that'll be an unexpected boom or boon for many local farms, which will be overwhelmed by the work, giving other people the impetus to buy land or to use land that's in the family or has lain fallow for a long time to begin farming there. So, get rid of California farms, and the rest of the country suddenly has a good drive, good motivation to grow food for themselves. In the meantime, prices skyrocket. And it's almost good news that we know this ahead of time, because it may be giving some people, some clever people, the impetus to go grow vegetables now, to bring them to market, as we say, to bring them to market ahead of the next season, which would be the winter, this coming winter. It would be very good for people to start planting as many fields as they can now with things that they can sell locally to compete with California. Because for the first time, it might be much cheaper to buy it locally because it won't be artificially kept down by the water they're stealing, because they have a kind of a land right system there that says if you own the land, you own all the water you can pump out underneath the land, even though water flows horizontally, so you're just stealing from a giant, statewide aquifer. No, it doesn't make any sense at all, but that's the way land rights were developed, because everything has to be developed along a legal framework, which means that it has no logic to it at all. It's just a tiny bit of logic put on the side of a total insanity trap, and that's where we live. It's like a Bruegel painting. No, it's like a Hieronymus Bosch painting. I mean, really, that's what the world looks like. It's a Hieronymus Bosch painting. Garden of Earthly Delights, or something much worse. And if I've lost you, go look up Hieronymus Bosch, B-O-S-C-H, like my last name, S-C-H-E-F-F. Go look up Hieronymus Bosch and you'll see what I'm talking about. Okay. So vegetables crashing, the vegetable market, the food market in California crashing is bad, but maybe there's a silver lining to the broccoli. In the meantime, it's going to be rough because food prices will go up and people in California will be suffering and trying to figure out what they'll be doing. I already made the suggestion that they ban all factory farming and all cattle farming in their state, except for, whatever roams wild and free, that they get rid of feeding cattle, which absorb a couple thousand gallons of water per edible pound of beef. And they stick with things like beans and local grains that grow in, buckwheat and millet, things that grow in dry weather. And that they enjoy it and have a great life. And you will have a great, let the avocados grow, let the buckwheat and millet grow, let all the plants that grow in dry weather grow and enjoy. That'll chase a lot of the phonies out of California who think that it's, supposed to be just, have the same vegetable profile as New York State, where they're from, or Vermont in the summer, in the 3 weeks of summer, or the Carolinas, and it'll send them back. It'll send them back to where they came from. And fine, good. And the hardier desert stock can stay out there and enjoy the desert that is California. It's fine with me. The Mediterranean climate of some of it is very nice. Doesn't really naturally support 20 or 30 million people, however many people are in that state. I'm not going to look it up right now, but it's somewhere about there. All right. California dives lower. Well, we're still producing most of our food in Monsanto land. And Monsanto land is the area from, Illinois and Wisconsin in the north down to Texas in the south that sucks, I don't think Wisconsin does, but that sucks up the Ogallala aquifer. Very dry states, Missouri and Texas, New Mexico, that suck water from the Ogallala aquifer. Ogallala. It was an Indian group, I think. They sang YMCA. So the Ogallala is a giant 9-state, I think, 8 or 9 state body of underground water that we've been sucking dry now since World War II, 40 or 50 years. We've depleted, 60-something% of it, maybe. I might have it. It's a little more than half. And nobody really knows because there's no measuring stick, but they know that some areas are already dry and it's uneven and so on and so forth. that's still the way we're growing our food, and we're holding down most of the ground there by overspraying it, by growing in these little circular, when you fly over the country in an aeroplane, those will go out of business in this next decade, airplanes. In the 2020s, no more airplanes. They'll go out of business. I mean, people may still fly planes, but the commercial aviation thing that we knew in the late 20th century is over. But those little round plots that you see, that's not nature. That's a circular watering system. And they have a mechanical arm that waters in a circle. But the air is so dry, and they're pumping out of the Ogallala. That's not local water. So that's why you see these big, vast patches of yellow and orange clay and dirt, and then you see these little green rings. We're not really supposed to be growing food for the nation there, but we are. Food can be relocated to everywhere else. This is the most, if I could pick the important part, and you just only heard one little bit, it would be this. Food can be grown everywhere else. Food can be grown in and around anywhere in New York State. I already said Vermont, Connecticut, parts of Rhode Island. Let's see, let's work our way down. Virginia is a great place to grow food. Virginia is wonderful. Pennsylvania is a great place to grow food, except for all the fracking. West Virginia, let's see, North Carolina, South Carolina, what did I miss? Who did I leave out? Georgia, Tennessee, Arkansas, Alabama. These places are great at growing food, or they were. No, it's hot, and you have a lot of pestilence, you have a lot of bugs. You got to deal with that. You got the boll weevil. Mr. Boll Weevil, don't try to grow any cotton. Maybe we could plant hemp. That would be great, huh? Plant a lot of hemp, get a lot of hemp seeds, a lot of fat. We need fat in our diets. We're going to need energy-dense sources of food because we're not going to be having so much cheap sugar beet production that we just mill 90-something% of it away just to eat the 10 or 5% of it as sugar. No. We're going to need energy-dense forms of food that we don't need as much of, but that are caloric so that we don't starve to death. And hemp is a great, great plant to grow for that because the seed is fatty and is energy-dense and is full of nutrients. And, of course, the leaves are medicinal, and the leaves and parts of the seeds are incredibly medicinal, the CBD oil, which we've talked about on the show. So fight for that. Plant a lot of trees. Here's what we should be doing. We really should have a Johnny Appleseed, but not apples. Quince and pear and pomegranate and whatever grows in your area. Avocado, if you live in that kind of environment, in a deep, hot environment, in a tropical environment, grow a lot of avocado. What else? Trees whose names that I do not know. Tropical fruits that grow down in Florida and the Gulf Coast that stink a little. Durian, not quite durian, for those come from somewhere else, but you get the idea. Strange tropical fruits that you've never heard of. Star fruit, plantains. Everybody in the South should grow plantains. If you're tropical enough, grow plantains because they're starchy, they grow like crazy. I think they're mother-daughter plants, so they're all clones. You can reclone them pretty easily and replant them very easily. That is a problem for genetic diversity of the plants. So you want to find varieties of bananas and plantains, but you still want to grow them because they're energy dense and they grow easily. Coconuts should be planted all over Florida. Instead of just they plant like decorative palms all over the place that produce weird inedible shit instead of coconut and date palm. We should have date palms everywhere. We should have fig trees, date palms, and coconut palms everywhere. But instead we have these things that are decorative things that don't produce jack diddly fucking shit. Why do we do that? We are afraid of people eating on the street? Well, it'd be better that people can get food from a tree than people try to eat you. As I outlined in the first half, put a good energy interruption into a single area for a period of a week, and you've got mass chaos. Better to have some food on the trees. And don't tell me that people will just pick all the food in the first day, because they won't. They'll pick some of it, and other people will come along, and they'll be... So then you plant a lot of trees. If we're not planting every tree we plant now should be a food tree. The goddess, the gods, whatever you believe in, the gods and the goddesses gave us fruit and I almost said vegetable trees. I understand, -1. Fruit trees and starch trees and fat trees. That's what my head is trying to say is there are different things that grow in trees. Some of them are fatty, some of them are starchy, and some of them are sweet. And we should be planting all of them. All of them. I mean, you can't live on plums, but you can have plums and pears and walnuts and chestnuts, and then you can live. You can. You could do that. You roast the chestnuts, you cook the fruit, you can do it. It's a wonder. It would probably be a really great diet for you. Get sick of it after a while and want some greens. So you grow some greens. You let dandelions grow everywhere. The God in nature, Goddess has given us dandelions, so we don't even have to cultivate fucking salad. Dandelions are good. They're bitter as hell, and they're great. And they'll really clean you out. They'll clean that liver of yours. Why don't we have dandelion parks everywhere? There are foods that will grow that we can eat. And we should be actively starting a tree planting revolution in this country. And I know I don't get on a soapbox very much for activism because I'm not much of a joiner. You know, any club that would have me as a member, I'd rather not join because I just don't like the association of too many people. But I joined the tree planting club. There's room for all of us in the tree planting club. Plant food trees. I can't think of anything better to do with our time now than plant food trees. I can think of no better activism now than planting food trees. Go to your Home Jackass or your Depot or your Lowe's or whatever, or your local, better than that, go to your local garden, independent garden thing and see where they contract to get year-old seedlings. They're not seedlings anymore, year-old young trees. And have your yard looked at for the kind of soil it is. Figure out how to do compost treatments, because you might plant a tree and it might not do well, it might not like it might need some composting treatments, which isn't as hard as it sounds. You get a bucket, you put a bubbler in it, and you let it rot for a couple of days, and then you pour the water around the root, and then you do it again. It's not that hard. We're all afraid of it. I understand. I get afraid of that kind of stuff too. Oh, what if I screw it up? Well, it's just muck. You throw it on the ground. Bacteria will be okay. The bacteria will all digest it. You can save a lot of trees by learning to compost treatment around the roots. But like I said in the first half, as bicycles become cool with the yuppies, so will tree care. And I don't mean that stuff where you hire somebody to cut down a couple knuckleheads to cut shit down. I'm talking about planting things that grow food in your lawns. Planting things that grow food in your lawns. What if everybody in your neighborhood had a fruit or a fatty nut tree? Well, how worried would you be about starvation? Not very. Not very. You'd always have something to trade. And then you build your garden in the mottled shade of the tree. Some things in the bright sun, some things in the shade, and then you have a garden. And the garden is nurtured by the tree, and the tree is nurtured by the garden. And you put in some shrubs. The shrubs have raspberries and blueberries and capers, and you put in some some bean bushes, and you get beans off of those, and binding beans. And within a couple of years, this thing seems to be just self-propagating. I'm saying 3 years of work, and you've got a food system in your own yard. And so many people can do this. Everybody with a yard should do this. Put in the food tree. Learn to treat it. Put in the shrubs that are hard to kill, that produce berries and capers and whatever. And my God, if you're lucky enough to live in the right climate, you can raise olives. If you have real land, if you have an acre or more, you plant 20 trees, 30 trees. Put in a variety of trees. Don't monocrop. Put in a variety. If you live in the south, put in some citrus and some, I don't know if pomegranate would grow in the south, but you could try. Put in some pecans. Oh my God. Pecans you love them. Well, how could you say no? If you're in a wet enough climate, a Mediterranean climate, grow some almonds. If you live in, let's see, what else can we grow? Oh my God. There are varieties of avocados. How about mangoes? I mean, these things, just these giant, plump, beautiful things, just hang off these trees by it looks like thousands, by many hundreds. How could you say no? Why aren't we doing this? We are going to be doing this. This is what we're going to be doing. I know. I've generally been a guy who provides you information and critique of, almost a philosophical critique of the way that people think and the way that we think, with a little bit of comedy. So you'll have to indulge me. I've talked about permaculture for a long time, But this multi-tiered garden idea, where we have food trees and we plant gardens in and around it, seems to be a natural. In a low-energy environment, instead of just scaring you by telling you what's coming, if we're not actively planting food, we might as well be sticking nails through a cucumber and shoving it up our asses. I just thought that deserved a dramatic pause to really sink in. If we're not taking this opportunity to grow real food, and I'm not saying that you have one berry tree in your front yard, that's nice. That's a start, but you need fat. So find a nut tree or a chestnut tree, a walnut, an almond. Listen, acorns are flinty things, but you can cook them, or you can cook them with, cook them with lye. Well, maybe you do. You cook them with something very alkaline, and you take away the tannins. And then they're not great, but you can eat them. I'm saying there are things you can do. They're certainly better things to eat than acorns, but you can still survive on acorns. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Our diet is going to be changing. Let sweet potatoes take over half of your yard. You'll be damned grateful that you did if you live in the South. Let potatoes take over half of your yard in the North. Let them take over. Plant a variety. Not just one variety. Plant the little fingerlings and the red and the purple and the blue and the russet. Plant all kinds, because they're essentially vining underground. They're creepers. They'll just take over underground. They grow sideways. Let them go. Let them grow. Don't be fussy. Let them grow. And if you have groundhogs, kill the little fuckers. Sorry. Get out of here, varmint. Learn to work with nature as much as possible. Learn to feed the groundhog over here and trap it over here, and listen, whatever. You may have to kill a groundhog or two. It's nice that you have kale in your garden, but you'll starve to death eating kale for a couple. Just starve to death. You need fat and you need starches. So grow big, hefty winter squash, filled with seeds, and roast the seeds and grind them and eat them. Grow anything that grows fat in it. Grow heads and heads of giant sunflower. Heads and heads. Grow Jerusalem artichokes. Grow Jerusalem artichokes and heads of sunflower. And find all the things that I'm not naming that are unique to your area, that don't show up on the normal seed guides, and grow them. You'll be delighted. But plant that food tree first. Plant a food tree and know that you're ensuring something of a future. And a fruit tree, you might plant it and not get fruit for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. So you might want to take a tree that you already have and graft a branch of an already working fruit tree onto it. No, I know. That's a little bit of work. The concept is simple. You actually you rip, the arm off a growing fruit tree, and you cut out a space on an existing fruit tree that will host it, and you literally hammer it and tie it in. And you hope the xylem and phloem take, and the thing begins to work with the tree, and generally they do, and then you have food coming off of a different kind of tree. Grafting is a well understood process that anybody working in garden agriculture, anybody good working in agricultural can take you through, or anybody who's had experience with it can take you through it. So do it. Don't be afraid to graft arms of existing fruit trees onto trees so that you get an earlier bloom, or you have a tree that's blooming a couple of different kinds of things. And in a while you have, trees that come along that only give one thing, and you have a tree that comes along and gives something else. The dear delight of all of this is that you'll be walking down the street, and there'll be some sort of purple prune plum growing, a teardrop plum, and you won't even know who planted it or why. And nobody will be telling you not to take any. They'll be smashed all over the ground. There's so many of them. You pick up a few, eat them. They're incredibly sweet and delicious. You feel happy. You walk along, you see some yellow plums. You do it. You go back to your place, and they're red and purple plums, and somebody walks by and says, "Can I?" You say, "Yeah, take a handful. Take a bunch." Pacific Northwest is rotten with them. Grow plums all over the place. You don't need to have any particular kind of landscape to do it. It's the right place to do it. So do it, for God's sake. Do it. The Southwest is tough. It's tough, Not a lot of rain. The jet stream isn't favoring you guys. You're pumping all the water into cows. so that Carl's Jr. and In-N-Out can still maintain this bullshit notion of the American way as being equivalent to a hamburger, which isn't ham, and I don't know what a burger would be, but it's enough. Let's go a little lower in the food chain. Raise rabbits. They breed like bunnies, I hear. Raise rabbits. Why not? What's your big fear? What, are you going to become emotionally attached to them because you see them? Well, try raising a cow. Rabbits will eat the grass that nobody else will eat. They're going to eat this and digest this cellulose, and they're going to breed like bunnies. The expression is there for a reason, and you'll hire somebody to kill them if you don't want to do it, and you'll have rabbit once in a while, or guinea pig. Or don't look at them, whatever. Don't play with them, or just let them be on their own. Or eat their eggs. They lay little chocolate eggs. I think is what those are. I hope. Wait a second. You're listening to the Liam Scheff Show and UCY Radio and UCY TV and Truth Frequency Radio. Please support independent research, independent journalism in my quest to go around the country and tell people how to grow, why, and how to grow food forests, starting with trees, shrubs, brushes, and the ground vegetables that we're used to growing. And why? Why? Because we like it. Why? Because oil is running lower. Why? Because the future looks a lot more like Dickens than the Jetsons. Why? Because we don't want to be starving to death in case of a food interruption. Why? Because we want to have plenty of wood to burn in case there's an interruption. So we're going to have to plant some of those trees too. Wood trees. I know. I said just food. We'll take some pine along with that. Hey, pine grow easily. Thank you very much for listening. Please go buy my books. Please help keep me in short pants and underwear that doesn't have holes in it. Let me get some new socks. Please support my work. You can fund me through PayPal on my website. Go to liamscheff.com, liamscheff.com, S-C-H-E-F-F. I don't have Bitcoin or anything like that yet. I'll have to see if I care enough to get into that. Stay tuned to all the great programming. We shall see you next time. UCY listeners, stay tuned for a special 2 minutes coming right up. Oh, it's a special Liam Scheff anniversary holiday cocktail party gift napkin for UCY TV. Why? Because you're not running a commercial right now. Thank you very much for listening. I hope that you enjoyed that tree lecture. It's just the beginning. I'm going to be learning all about trees, and I'm going to try to be a good steward of my friends out there and tell you what kind of trees work in some areas and not in others. Yeah, I'm serious. I really believe in this message. I've been thinking long and hard. The thought has been throttling through my mind and body. What are you going to do? How are you going to be useful? Are you going to run away? Are you going to become a Buddhist monk? I mean, you don't know the thoughts that I've had. Are you going to, because the mob crowd thing is not my thing. The survival thing with the gun and the cannibalism is not my thing. So, I have to think about it. What are you going to do, Liam? What are you going to do? How are you going to be of service? How are you going to be of value to yourself, to others? Are you going to run and hide? Are you just going to wait out the time and watch it all burn? Or are you going to try to do something? What do you want? I've asked myself, what do you want? Well, I want people to be okay. I want them to have options. Well, how do they do that? Well, they need food. Well, how do they have food? And I've been wrestling with this. How do you fight it? How do you fight for it? How do you fight against it? What do you do? How much information do you give them? Do you scare the devil out of them, or do you just scare them enough? How scared are you? I have asked myself, how scared am I? Pretty scared at times when you read about how oil declines in some places, when you read about North Korea and the tens of millions who starved and the cannibalism that happened in some places. It's not a wonderful picture. Food seems to be the answer, food and cooperation. So, I don't know. My mind has gone to trees. And I like it being there. So that's what we're going to be talking about for now until, until they take the show away, which they probably won't. But, from now until we see how it goes. Anyway, listen, thanks for hanging out with me today. I'm sure you have wonderful, exciting things to do. Go look up your area and see what kind of trees grow naturally and see what you could plant in your soil, in your yard that would grow. And get excited and learn about grafting and get to know the people who grow trees in your area, grow food trees in your area. If it's cold where you live, think about getting a wood-burning stove or a pellet stove. That would be pretty cool. It would be a pretty cool thing to have. And don't turn the neighbors away when they need help, so they don't turn you away when you need help. Okay, lots of love. Mahalo. See you next time.